Hello everyone, you have come to Tata Comic Preview channel. Let read together. Have fun. Li Feiyu's brows suddenly furrowed. I heard that Noah's ship has appeared and found a master. I don't know if it's true. Has Ninth Aunt heard about it? Yunxiao's heart stirred as he listened quietly. Yi Fan had obtained Noah's ship. Although most of the people who knew about it were dead, there was no secret in the world. It was only a matter of time before it spread. I've heard of this before, Aunt Jo said. But this is not the first time the news of Noah's ship has spread. Every time it turns out to be a scam. But this time, it's a bit too exaggerated, as if it's true. It also seems to be related to the Tang tribulation of the Four Extremes sect, Li Feiyu said. Aunt Jo pondered and said, oh? Could it be that Tang Jia has obtained Noah's ship? Aunt Jo, you should know that the young key to Noah's ship has always been in the hands of the Merchant Union. Could it be that the Four Extremes sect is in charge of it this year? Li Feiyu sighed and said, AI, this is exactly what's giving me a headache. I'll need too much time and energy to figure out what's going on. I feel that the heavenly martial arts realm is becoming more and more unstable. If the rumors are true, then this is the second major event after the collapse of Mount Meru in the southern region. Young Master Yun, he said, looking at Yunxiao. Have you heard of it? Yunxiao gave him a strange look, and the calabash little King Kong said in a deep voice, I have never heard of it. How can we know something that even your myriad treasure store is not sure about? His words weren't false. These two matters were done by him personally, but he had never heard of them. That's right, Aunt Jo said with a smile. I'm afraid the Merchant Union is the most well-informed place in the world. She gave the calabash King Kong a look, then turned to Yunxiao and said with a smile, Young Master Yun, I knew that you were the real one, so you didn't have to pretend in front of me. The Mei family's ability to recognize treasures is unparalleled in the world. Your puppet is indeed a supreme treasure, and it even has a spiritual consciousness. Although it is an 8th-rank treasure, its value is not below that of a 9th-rank treasure. Yunxiao did not feel depressed. With a faint smile, he slapped the calabash King Kong with his palm and took it back into his body. Then, he said with a smile, just in time, I don't have to pretend anymore, it's very tiring. The three of them looked at each other and laughed, then turned into a ray of light and flew into the phoenix carriage. There were actually buildings and jade spaces inside, filled with all kinds of spiritual flowers and rare herbs, and a large number of oddly shaped stones. All kinds of beautiful maidservants were shuttling back and forth. Some of them were playing with the rocks, and some were trimming the flowers and plants. They were decorating the battleship like a small courtyard. Yunxiao and Li Feiyu exchanged a glance and smiled wryly. Only a woman would have the mind to dress up like this. The Mei family has always shown up at auctions in various places with men, and they are basically all old men, Yunxiao said curiously. Why are all the people around you women, 9th Aunt, but not a man? I'll tell you about it slowly, Aunt Jo said with a smile. Please come in and have a seat. The battleship turned into a beam of light and disappeared into the sky above the city lord's mansion. Soon, it had left Yufeng City and was heading east. Although Yufeng City was large, it could not accommodate so many sections. Many forces had built their manors in the surrounding spiritual mountains and rivers. After the battleship flew dozens of miles to the east, it disappeared into thin air and traveled through the void. The Mei family's location was extremely secretive, and few people knew about it. Aunt Jo welcomed the two of them warmly and said, what young Master Yun just mentioned is no secret. Those old men who participated in the Chamber of Commerce's auction are actually the husbands of the Mei family. Yunxiao was taken aback, but Li Feiyu looked extremely calm, as if he had known about it long ago. I've observed the Mei family's appraisal ability a few times, Yunxiao said in confusion. It seems to be an extremely powerful innate ability. I originally thought it was through bloodline inheritance, but it seems that my guess was wrong. Young Master Yun, your observation skills are indeed very good, Aunt Jo said in surprise. You're already much stronger than many people to be able to think of the bloodline inheritance. The bloodline is also part of this ability, but only 1/3 of it. The other 1/3 is a cultivation technique passed down from generation to generation in my Mei family. As for the last 1/3, it's a secret. Forgive me for not being able to reveal it to others. It doesn't matter, Yunxiao said. Ninth aunt has been very frank. The Mei family's secret place wasn't far from Yufeng City. They quickly emerged from the void and entered a valley. The valley was lush with spiritual qi, like a paradise. The warship flew directly above an elegant residence, and the three of them landed. Aunt Jiu immediately set up a banquet, and all kinds of delicacies were served. Beautiful maidservants of all shapes and sizes shuttled through the banquet, which was pleasing to the eye. Yunxiao laughed. If I hadn't come to Plum Valley, my impression of your Mei family would still be that you were all old men and lifeless. Who would have thought that it would be a completely different scene? Li Feiyu raised a cup of jade-like liquid and took a sip. He praised, the Mei family's 100 flowers dew wine is comparable to spirit pills and medicine. It's not easy to make this 100 flowers dew wine, Aunt Jo said with a smile. Its effect is comparable to the ice jade pearl that young Master Yun obtained. Oh. Yunxiao took a bite, and sure enough, he felt a stream of spirit qi flowing into his dantian, which benefited him a lot. He was overjoyed. He didn't care about his manners anymore and gulped down the entire pot of wine. Aunt Jo and Li Feiyu's mouths were wide open. Although Li Feiyu also wanted to drink without restraint like this, he was still a guest, so how could he lose his manners? Aunt Jo's heart ached when she saw this, and she immediately asked the beautiful servant to get more wine. This time, she secretly sent a voice transmission to the beautiful servant, asking her to sit next to Yunxiao and pour him wine with a wine pot in her hand. Otherwise, if he poured the wine into his mouth, the Mei family would be poor no matter how rich they were. Even so, Yunxiao still drank cup after cup without holding back. Cough, cough, young Master Yun is really generous. Li Feiyu heavily reminded him to pay attention to his demeanor, and he couldn't help but pretend that he didn't know him. Yunxiao laughed and said, This wine is good, can ninth aunt give me a few jars? I don't know how much stock the Mei family has left. I'll get someone to take a look. Aunt Jo's face darkened. Let's not talk about this for now, let's talk about serious business. She was afraid that the wine would be finished before they could even talk about business. Yunxiao laughed as he took out the thumb-sized piece of skyshine metal and played with it in his hand. Since ninth aunt has recognized this thing, I wonder what price you are willing to pay to buy it? Aunt Jo's eyes lit up, and she did not hide her desire. She did not answer the question. Pardon my rudeness, but I'd like to ask young Master Yun if that's all? If you still want to do it? That's all I have, Yunxiao interrupted with a wave of his hand. That's all I have. Since ninth aunt knows what this is, how can there be a lot of it? Aunt Jo looked disappointed and said, that might not be the case. Although the Northern Heaven frigid star iron can't be compared to this, it's still a top-grade material for artifact refinement. Young Master Yun, that piece of iron must weigh at least 1,000 jin, right? Li Feiyu's heart trembled upon hearing this, and he asked in shock, Ninth aunt, don't keep us in suspense. What is this thing? It's even higher than the Northern Heaven cold star iron? It's the heavenly shine K gold that I couldn't find for a long time. Ninth aunt sighed. It's actually this. Li Feiyu was also shocked. He looked at the small piece of metal in Yunxiao's hand in horror, his eyes rippling, and his heart was not calm. The heavenly shine imperial gold was one of the world's best refining materials. Even if it was only the size of a thumb, if it could be integrated into a sharp weapon, it could be said to be indestructible. Even the 10,000 treasures building might not have it in stock. Aunt Jo said, I don't know if this piece of thumb is enough. Young Master Yun, can you name a price for the Northern Heaven frigid star iron? What kind of mystic weapon are you going to refine, Ninth aunt? Yunxiao asked curiously. It actually needs a combination of skyshine metal and Northern Heaven cold star iron? Ninth aunt shook her head with a bitter smile and said, this is the secret of our sect. I need to forge a sharp weapon to cut open something. If he could get 10 thumbed pieces of Tensho metal, it would be enough. If young Master Yun can get it, our sect will give you a satisfactory price even if we have to spend all our fortune. Yunxiao's heart jolted. As the head of the Mei family, Ninth Aunt had actually said such a thing. It was clear that she had indeed encountered a great problem. However, the Tianzhao K gold was much more precious than the Northern Heaven Cold Star iron, and he had kept it for himself. If he didn't urgently need the ice jade pearls, he would definitely not take it out to trade. He could only helplessly say, "There's no more Tensho gold, but I wonder what Ninth Aunt wants to cut open?" Ninth Aunt shook her head and did not want to say it. If that's the case, then what price does young Master Jin Yun of the Heavenly Reflection Court want? Yunxiao pondered for a moment and said, "The price of this skyshine K gold is negotiable. I don't mind giving it to Aunt Jo. But, there's something I need to figure out." Oh. Aunt Jo found it strange. Yunxiao did not look like a very generous person, so what could make him so generous? Yunxiao stared at her and said, "I'm Maid Dong's friend. I really want to know what happened between her and the Mei family." Aunt Jo's face changed drastically, and her eyes turned sharp. Her eyes were filled with killing intent as she stared at Yunxiao and snapped, "So it's you. So it was you who killed Wang De and dragged my Mei family into this." Yunxiao naturally knew that he could not cover it up, so he said with a wry smile, "There are some misunderstandings. If Ninth Aunt has the patience, you can listen to me in detail." Aunt Jo snorted and immediately sent out a signal. In an instant, several powerful auras rushed over from all directions. Although they were nowhere to be seen, they had locked Yunxiao in place, and Li Feiyu's face changed. "Let's see what you can come up with today," Aunt Jo said coldly. "As for Maid Dong, I've already sent someone to invite her. You'll be able to meet her soon." Yunxiao looked slightly displeased, but when he thought that Imo Xiaochuan was there, it should not be a big problem. So, he held back his anger and sat there calmly, explaining the whole thing. In the end, he said, "I want to know the relationship between Maid Dong and you because she's my good friend. I want to help her. As for killing Wang De, Wang Gong already knows that I'm the one behind it. With his status as a great grandmaster, he naturally wouldn't vent his anger on you guys for no reason." Aunt Jo was suspicious and snorted. "You're saying that you managed to repel a wisp of Wang Gong's spiritual sense? It was simply a bunch of nonsense. The Miao Xian sect can become one of the top 10 sects in the North region, and Wang Gong is a 9-stars martial sovereign. If a wisp of his divine sense is sent down, even an ordinary martial sovereign might be able to defeat him. Young Master Yun, you're right about repelling Wang Gong." "I've seen everything," Li Feiyu said. "What?" Aunt Jo was shocked. She naturally believed Li Feiyu's words. She looked at Yunxiao with a horrified look and said, "Are you a martial supreme?" With Yunxiao's age, no one would believe that he was a martial emperor. "Young Master Yun, it was that super strong puppet that forced Wang Gong's divine will back," Li Feiyu said. Wang Gong was also afraid that if his strength increased too much, it would affect Wang Zhen's martial Dao talent, so he had been suppressing it to the rank of martial honor. Aunt Jo's suspicion disappeared, but her expression was still cold. She snorted. "Even so, you can't escape responsibility for the death of my Granny Kue and the destruction of my restaurant." Yunxiao was furious. His eyes shone with a fierce light as he glared at her with a nearly tangible killing intent and said, "That ugly old woman deserved to die. If Ninth Aunt is not convinced, you can let people hit me." He had never been questioned like this before. If it weren't for Maid Dong, he would have fallen out with her from the start. Now, he had reached the point where he couldn't bear it anymore. I also want to see what kind of strength the young man who can force Wang Gong's divine will has." Aunt Jo was also furious. She slapped the table, and an invisible force immediately shot out, turning into a slashing force in the air and shooting toward Yunxiao. Li Feiyu furrowed his brows. Just as he was about to make a move to stop them, he seemed to have thought of something and retreated, quietly watching. His eyes had been fixed on Yunxiao the whole time, and he was very curious about his identity and strength, so he wanted to check it out. "Since we've fallen out, I won't be polite. I'll directly capture you and bring you to Maid Dong. To plead guilty." Yunxiao's eyes were cold, and a murderous aura began to emanate from his body. The beautiful maid who poured the wine was so frightened that she threw down the wine pot and ran away. Aunt Zhou was furious. The other party had threatened to take her to apologize to a junior who had been kicked out of the house, which directly provoked her dignity and authority. She said angrily, "Capture this person." Li Feiyu had said that Yunxiao had forced Wang Gong to retreat, and she believed him very much. So, she did not underestimate him and immediately called for help. This was also because women were very meticulous. If they were men and saw the other party's martial arts grandmaster cultivation, they would not pay any attention to him. Humph. Yunxiao snorted coldly. The slash cut his figure in half, revealing his afterimage. Her real body had already appeared beside Ninth Aunt, and a sword ray left her hand and stabbed forward. Aunt Zhou dodged to the side, leaving a few afterimages behind. She dodged the sword light and floated up into the air. A large amount of dust surged up from below her body and condensed into a yellow dirt ball that was a few feet long and wide in front of her. It emitted a shocking wave of vital energy. Once it exploded, the entire courtyard would be destroyed. It's better for you to summon your puppet. Otherwise, with your cultivation level, let alone fighting with me, I'll crush you into pieces with a single move. Ninth Aunt's eyes were cold and filled with killing intent. Humph. Yunxiao snorted. Do you still want to have a fair fight with me? Then what's with the divine sense that's locked onto me? I'm just reminding you out of goodwill, Aunt Zhou said angrily. I don't want you to die unconvinced. Since you don't need it, you can go to hell. Dust Earth Technique, kill. The small ball in front of her spun rapidly, throwing out a large amount of dust, which formed tiny tornadoes and attached to the ball, as if they had more than a dozen braids. The surrounding space was thrown into chaos, and the rustling sound of sand being sifted came from all directions as the tornadoes pressed toward Yunxiao. Yunxiao had at least several ways to deal with the move in front of him, but he did not dare to use them because he had concerns. This was because Li Feiyu was standing beside him. He was very likely to be a formidable opponent in the two meetings. Furthermore, this person was known as the Four Prodigies of the North region. He was also very knowledgeable. If he were to recognize his moves, it would be extremely troublesome. The mortal world gazes at Ing Hao Yu Die. Yunxiao shouted. The Northern Heaven Cold Star Sword appeared in his hand, and a powerful weapon charm fluctuated, colliding with the fluctuation produced by the small ball. Then, a sword beam flickered as the Thousand Expedition art was performed. That's a Swan NI 9th grade profound armament. Aunt Zhou was taken aback. At a glance, she saw the sword in Yunxiao's hand and immediately judged its grade. From the sword's light and color, she understood that it was a divine weapon made of Northern Heaven Cold Star iron. The two waves of energy overlapped and penetrated each other. The sword light followed closely behind and directly entered the small ball. In an instant, the small ball was split into two halves, and a large amount of dust scattered in the air. Under the misty atmosphere, the two halves exploded. Boom. As expected, the powerful force instantly annihilated the surroundings. The entire courtyard was covered in dust. The buildings and various decorations inside were instantly turned into powder and disappeared. Aunt Zhou's attack was still too powerful. Yunxiao raised his sword to block it, and the aftermath broke through his sword momentum and shook his body. His body glowed with a golden light as he resisted the huge force, but he was still forced to retreat. Li Feiyu had already flown up into the sky. When he looked back, his heart trembled. He hurriedly wiped his eyes, thinking that he had seen wrongly. When he looked again, Yunxiao had returned to normal. Li Feiyu's heart was filled with suspicion. There was clearly a golden light just now, as if the other party had transformed, but the dust that was stirred up by the qi was too strong, so he didn't dare to confirm it. In order to probe Yunxiao's true strength, he had only had the strength of a martial grandmaster from the beginning to the end. But the sword just now had brought out the great power of a 9th-tier mystic artifact. Not only had it split open the domain of a martial honor, but it had also cut off 9th Ant's dust attack, doing something completely impossible. And how did he withstand the aftermath of 9th Ant's move? Was it the golden light just now? However, he couldn't see it clearly, which made him suspicious. Jade Shadow Chi swirling sword returning to Seoul. Yunxiao cried out softly, and a sword beam rose up from the dust. Although there was no domain, it presented a sea of sword chi that was not inferior to the domain at all. Although he was unable to pry into the core of the Thousand Expedition noble art, there was no one else in the world who had a better understanding of the way of the sword than him, so he could at least simulate 70 to 80% of it. Aunt Jo was also shocked. She could not believe that the other party could compete with her without using a puppet. But what was even more shocking was the 9th tier Northern Heaven's Cold Star Sword. Even if she used a 9th tier mystic weapon, it was extremely easy for her to be devoured by the weapon rhythm. How could the other party, who had a mere martial arts grandmaster cultivation, use it so casually? Stop! She suddenly shouted and raised her slender hand to point in the air. A finger light shot out and collided with the sword chi of the Thousand Expedition art. The power of the collision spread out, but she was shocked to find that she didn't have the upper hand. You said you'd fight and you said you'd stop. This may be the Plum Valley, but I'm not a member of the valley. Yunxiao was inexplicably angry, and he felt a little aggrieved. After his rebirth, he had been dealing with these minions that he would not even look at in the past. Furthermore, he had been suppressed and beaten by them at every turn, and they would scold him at will. An indescribable irritation welled up from the bottom of his heart. In the depths of his soul, the demonic dragon suddenly opened its eyes, which flickered with shock. Circles of black patterns began to appear on Yunxiao's skin, spreading from his body and covering his entire body. It was the sign of demonization from before. Gu Feiyang, wake up! Yunxiao! The demon dragon suddenly shouted. He had already sensed that something was wrong with Yunxiao,